Good people of Africa, welcome to this side of time. Happy people of the world, welcome to duty. In times like this, you have many questions to ask. Can you provide answers to the questions you've been asking? I saw demonstrators in the north waving Russian flags, and I was asking, what do they want? They answered the question themselves. They want military takeover in Nigeria. I began to wonder if they understand where we are coming from. Perhaps they don't understand that the military took us back and delayed our advancement. Having said that, the democratic leadership since 1999 has not shown that commitment, that authentic commitment to national development. The character of the political leadership continue to arrest the development of the Nigerian state. However, the call for military coup is a descent into underdevelopment. What Nigeria needs is to nurture her democracy, redefine her democracy to suit her challenges, redefine her political, economic and social structures to bring progress to the people. Military coups in Africa have not shown the commitment for development. So on this edition of State Affairs, we will be looking at the raising of the Russian flag in Nigerian territory. Where is it coming from and what is the implication? The program is State Affairs on Splash 105.5 FM, the Integrity Station. I am Edmundo Pillow. Good morning.
State Affairs with Edmundo Pillow is live.
I'm in love.
But Awo did not build this
later.
hall.
He did.
He did?
Oh yes, Afoyela is his mother's name.
Oh.
This is the place where most of his memorable pictures. That's Mama's grandmother. Mama's grandmom. That is Chief Shonoiki that I was talking about.
Okay, I was friend.
The last of his children died about 6 months ago.
Oh. And he wasn't a member of the action group?
He probably was, but he was not a politician. He most likely was a member, was a supporter, but he wasn't. That's his driver. That's the driver that broke the door the day he died, yes.
Okay.
He also died about 6, 7 years ago, 8 years ago.
I think Ebenezer Obatakwe mentioned it in an article in the Tribune, how you helped.
Oh yeah, we do. Yes. We took over the funeral.
HID story. I have the book about her.
Okay.
Written by Wale Adeba.
Oh yes, yes. That is Mr. Michael Ekelba. His Papa's
cook.
He's from Edo State. He's from Ubiaja. In fact, his wife just died. She was 100 years old. She's going to be buried next week.
Wow.
The family has to be well represented at that funeral. Gladys, that's what Mama used to call her. Gladys. This is Michael Baba Lucky. One of his children still lives in Park Lane with his family.
Okay. And how is the Park Lane house?
It's also there. Nobody lives there right now.
I hope.
And that is the other cook. He's from Delta State.
Wow. So
he's an honorable man.
He liked food.
Oh yeah,
liked food.
He liked his food. He ate simply, ate healthy. But what I remember most about these two gentlemen, they always used to wait for Papa's plate, questions about what to cook for dinner.
Okay.
So if Papa's plate was not clean, they knew that the following morning they were going to face fire before. So it was always funny. They were always looking for his plate. Yeah, my master is happy today. Yeah. But to me, there are two heroes, both of them.
Okay.
Because during the crisis, I have no doubt that they must have been approached to do damage.
Okay.
But they didn't.
They were still cooking for him in prison?
Before he was sentenced, they were cooking.
Okay.
But even when he was at home in detention, was it detention or
house arrest?
Restriction, house arrest. They were still cooking his food. Oh yes, they were still cooking his food.
How many times did he eat in a day?
Twice.
Okay.
Breakfast and dinner. At 6 o'clock.
I learned it took a lot of time
dinner
eating.
At 6
to
o'clock.
eat. I will eat. It takes its time.
It took his time. He took his time. He chewed thoroughly before his. And he always had a balanced. People think that he didn't eat meat. That's not true.
Okay.
He always had fish, chicken, beef. Everything was complete. And then he would follow it with fruit.
Okay.
Fruit salad.
Mom?
Yes.
To threaten any section of this country, be warned. The law will catch up with you. There is no place for ethnic bigotry or such threats in the Nigeria we seek to build. Our democracy progresses when the constitutional rights of every Nigerian are respected and protected. Our law enforcement agencies should continue to ensure full protection of life and properties of innocent citizens in a responsible manner. My vision for our country is one of a just and prosperous nation where each person may enjoy the peace, freedom, and meaningful livelihood that only democratic good governance can provide. One that is open, transparent, and accountable to the Nigerian people. For decades, our economy has remained anemic and taken a dip because of many misalignments that have stunted our growth. Just over a year ago, our dear country, Nigeria, reached a point where we couldn't afford to continue the use of temporary solutions to solve long-term problems for the sake of now and our unborn generations. I therefore took the painful yet necessary decision to remove first subsidy and abolish multiple foreign exchange system, which had constituted a noose around the economic jugular of our nation and impede our economic development and progress. These actions block the greedy and the profit that smugglers and rent seekers made. They also block the undue subsidy we had extended to our neighboring countries to the detriment of our people, rendering our economy prostrate. These decisions are made were necessary if we must reverse the decades of economic mismanagement that didn't serve us well. Yes, I agree, the buck stops on my table, but I can assure you that I am focused fully on delivering the governance to the people, good governance for that matter. In the past 14 months, our government has made significant strides in rebuilding the foundation of our economy to carry us into a future of plenty and abundance.
So that was President Bola Tinubu on Sunday addressing the Nigerian people. In that statement, what the president basically did was to try to build trust. He was trying to convince the people to believe he's working for them. So let me look at this idea of building trust. It has to do with bridging the gap between the people and the government in Nigeria, because you seem to doubt everything they say. You remember Buhari complained for 8 years. He complained till he left. For the first 4 years, he was blaming Jonathan. He promised to create 1 million jobs, but as we speak, unemployment is rising. Tinubu is also taking that part, promising that everything good will come. But from past experiences, it will be right to doubt him, because government has not lived up to expectation. But will Tinubu be different? Perhaps he can be. So he's saying, give me time. These are the things I'm doing. Do you believe him? That's the question. Do you believe him? In recent times, in fact, before now, you see, Nigerians have been complaining from 1980. Even when the dollar was competing with the naira in terms of value, Nigerians have been complaining of poverty. I remember while growing up, whenever they brought light, we'd be screaming, "Up NEPA!" That means for more than 40 years, we've not been able to solve the problem of electricity. I remember there were poor people around me when we were growing up. I even remember my parents were struggling economically. You know, reflecting back, how come things are not changing? Okay, recently, I spent about 5 days in Benin. You know, he offered me another opportunity to closely look at where I was born. It seems the city is getting rusty. You know, you're not seeing that kind of development. I remember Adams Oshomole renovated some secondary schools. But those secondary schools are in terrible shape as I'm talking to you. Oshomole governed for 8 years before Godwin Obaseki took over. That means you're telling me within 12 years those secondary schools are broken down, including my own secondary school, as if nothing was done. So you begin to ask, why can't we just do things right? Was there supposed to be somebody to maintain those schools? Why do we construct roads and don't maintain them? Why do we build infrastructures and don't maintain them? So I wouldn't blame you if you don't trust what government says, because government has not lived up to expectation, from local government to state and to federal. So that deficit of trust between the people and government remains. This erosion of trust has weakened the bond that should exist between the governed and those entrusted with governance. And what this has done is to hinder our collective progress and prosperity. That means if you don't like Tinubu, you want him to fail. You know, it has gotten to that point. If you don't like Seyi Makinde, you want him to fail. If it has gotten to the point where you pray that the government should fail, we have built our mindset to that level because we are used to government failing. So you just want the government to fail, so that you can say, yes, I said it. And what that means is that we don't have that trust to build collective progress and prosperity, not minding who is in leadership. And it's something that we need to tackle. You know, Tinubu started that statement, ethnic bigotry. You know, one ethnic group threatening the other. It has been entrenched. And when you have such a system, you cannot build collective progress. You know, when Buhari was there, it's like the whole country was against the Fulani. Everything wrong was the Fulani at that time. But now, you are beginning to see people saying Yoruba ethnic bigotry is rising. Yoruba nepotism. That Tinubu has occupied everywhere with Yoruba people. You are beginning to see the Igbo sentiment, Igbo versus Yoruba. And that can be tied to Peter Obi versus Tinubu, not really Atiku Abubakar. When you have such a country, you cannot build collective progress, because the other ethnic group will be praying that something bad should happen to the leader that is from another ethnic group. There is something wrong with the social structure of such a society. Yes, no doubt, there's always division in any part of the world. But when it comes to collective progress, because if Tinubu fails, we all pay for it, whether you like him or not. But if Tinubu does well, we all benefit from it. So we need to begin to build that kind of system, where despite your bias, you know that the performance of any government has a direct impact on you. So we have found ourselves at that critical juncture where restoring trust is paramount for the stability and development of our country. It is imperative that we address the root causes of this deficit and work together to bridge the gap between the people and government. Seyi Makinde left us with a newsletter during the week. And in that newsletter, he was contradicting the position of the federal government. Let me look at that newsletter. Then you begin to ask, there's trust deficit even between the federal and state government. What is all this about? Seyi Makinde titled his recent newsletter, Taking a Break from the Norm. That is the title of the newsletter. He says, how are you? Each day seems to come with anxieties that make things a little more difficult for us. But I'm confident that this is the darkness before the light. Do you believe, Sheyi Makinde, that this is the darkness before the light? You know, Akala said it was the darkness before the light. Even Ladoja said it was the darkness before the light. Lama Adesina said it was the darkness before the light. Ajimobi came and echoed it for 8 years, that we are about moving into the light. Sheyi Makinde is on the 5th lap, and he's saying the darkness before the light. When will the light come? The governor says that the recent protest against food inflation and general hardship reflect the broader issues our nation faces, and again bring to the fore the need to focus on reshaping our approach to overcoming our economic challenges. Though the governor did not tell us what he means by reshaping our approach, but he must have made that comment in his State of the State address that was delivered on the 13th of June, where he clearly stated the approach he is taking. So in the newsletter, the governor says, before I speak more on further actions we have taken to show our commitment to productivity and sustainability, let me respond to a message I received earlier in the week from a concerned citizen. So the governor goes on to make the point that the message was about a purported 570 billion naira hardship fund given to the 36 states by the federal government. I was queried about what I used the money for. I like that. You need to query him when you see him. Ask him some tough questions. I can remember raising a point with him. I said, are you going to do 8 years without fixing the schools? Primary and secondary schools? The time is running out. That we need to fix those schools for the future. I keep repeating here that if we don't fix education, Sheyi Makinde has not done anything. Okay. He has decided to put in billion into the education sector. When you see the governor, keep mounting pressure on him. Ask him questions. It's not just about Tinubu. It's also about the governors. It's also about you. I'm looking at the governor's newsletter. I'm talking about trust deficit. It is between the federal government and the state. Because the federal government is saying that 570 billion hardship fund was disbursed to state governors as if federal government gave them the money. Sheyi is saying no. That is not true. He goes on to state, let me state categorically that this is yet another case of misrepresentation of facts. The said funds were part of the World Bank assisted NG Cares project, a program for resource intervention. The governor says the World Bank facilitated an intervention to help states in Nigeria with COVID-19 recovery. CARES means COVID-19 Action Recovery Economic Stimulus. It was called Program for Results because states had to use their money in advance to implement the program. The governor says after the World Bank verified the amount spent by state, it reimbursed the states through the platform provided at the federal level. He says the federal government did not give any state money. They were simply the conduit through which the reimbursement were made to states for money already spent. So you can see, and if you read the way the federal government put it, as if it has doled out money to states, and Makinde is saying no, it's not even federal government money. It is the state's money that has been spent, but World Bank is just paying back. Okay, but we still have a right to ask. If the money has been spent, that means you took money from somewhere else to spend on that project. Now that you have received this, what are you going to do with it? Yes. Mr. Governor, what are you going to do with the 570 billion? Or did you borrow money to spend it then? We need to begin to raise questions, but things are getting harder. Things are getting harder. In the local government, chairmen will have autonomy. They will become another center of power. The same character of the political leadership will also affect them. The political environment, the political culture always affects every system. So the autonomy you give them, yes, they might do one or two projects, but that same political culture will affect their minds. So how do we transform that political structure? You see, the reason behind the erosion of trust are many. They stem from a history of broken promises, corruption, inefficiency, and a lack of accountability. Many of us have witnessed instances where public resources are misappropriated, where government initiatives fall short of expectations, and where the needs of the people are overlooked in favor of personal or political interest. I doubt if there's any state government in Nigeria today that can confidently beat its chest that public water system is working. I remember growing up in Benin. We just go at the back of the house, you turn on the tap and water is rushing. You know, no magic. We could flush. We could have our bath under the shower. The public water system was working. Gradually, it just disappeared. Replaced by boreholes. So, are we depreciating or appreciating when it comes to public management of funds and infrastructure? I remember in my secondary school, there were about 5 Indians that were teaching. In my secondary school, in fact, Mr. Takuro married an Indian. The secondary school was so advanced, my introductory technology lab was better than my university lab as when I was studying electrical and electronics engineering. My introductory technology lab in secondary school was better than my university lab when I was studying electrical and electronics engineering. I couldn't reconcile it. We had machines, but unfortunately we were not allowed to use the machines. They were just there, even in our introductory technology labs. Benin Technical College then was so advanced that whenever we visited Benin Technical College and we went into their labs for excursion purposes, I was amazed. I didn't find that in my university. That means at that level, things were better. Okay, I was driving on the Ijebu-Ode Express, Ibadan-Ijebu-Ode Road. When I was going, I didn't want to drive on a lonely road. I said that Ijebu-Ode Ibadan Road can be lonely. I said, let me take Lagos Express Road and then connect to Shagamu, then straight to Benin. From Shagamu to Ijebu-Ode, the road is so bad. It's so bad. But the Ijebu Road, when I was coming back, I said, okay, let me take that Ijebu Road. I think the road will be busier at this time. There will be more cars on the road. Why was I calculating? Because kidnappers can bounce out from nowhere. It's a lonely road. So I calculate. But I must move. But I will calculate. You know, when I get to certain points, there's a way I will step on the accelerator. That if anybody jumps out, it's between me and the person and the gun. But you see that kind of calculation. You know, you are driving with your heart in your mouth, but we must move. The point I want to make here is that while driving on the Ijebu to Ibadan Road, I compared it to Shagamu to Ijebu. The Ijebu to Ibadan Road is better. It's more solid. And it was constructed long ago. Long ago. Why that Ijebu Shagamu has been innovated on different occasions. But again, why should we have that Shagamu Ijebu end that bad? That is one of the busiest highways in Africa. You see the failure of leadership? That is the failure of leadership. So how would Tinubu make me trust him? However, despite the challenges we confront, I'm a hopeful person. I see hope. Rebuilding trust is not an insurmountable task, but rather a collective endeavor that requires commitment, transparency, and accountability from both the government and the governed. As citizens, we must hold our leaders accountable for their actions and demand transparency in government affairs. We must actively participate in the democratic process, exercise our civic duties, and engage constructively with our elected representatives. We must advocate for policies that promote inclusivity, justice, and equality for all Nigerians. That's why I was happy to see Emeka Anyaoku visiting President Tinubu yesterday. That is engagement. If you look at the front page of the Tribune, you see, I will review request for new constitution. Tinubu speaks. Anyaoku, Oshoba, other leaders visit. President asks for constituent assembly. I will review request for new constitution. We've been talking about this again and again. The constitution is not working. The system is not working. So sometimes if you go and place an angel there, it will not work. We need to reconstitute the state, restructure the state. It's not working. We are struggling. Because some of these corrupt leaders we are talking about are also brilliant in their own right. Some of them are brilliant. Brilliant guys. So how come when they get into leadership, they don't perform? There must be something wrong that is affecting the minds of the leaders. So we need to redefine the structure. So Anyaoku, a former Commonwealth Secretary General, called on President Tinubu to convey a national constituent assembly to draft a new constitution for the country. This proposal was presented during a recent meeting with the president at the State House in Abuja. Chief Anyaoku, who is also the chair of the Patriots, emphasized the need for a new constitution, suggesting that the president should submit an executive bill to the National Assembly to kickstart this process. He outlined that the proposed National Constituent Assembly should be composed of individuals elected by the people on non-party basis. Chief Anyaoku further suggested that the new constitution should be subjected to a national referendum, allowing the people of Nigeria to have the final say. He noted that current laws do not provide for such a referendum and urged the National Assembly to legislate accordingly. In addition to the constitutional reforms that the elders called for, the meeting also addressed the ongoing protest across the country. Chief Anyaoku advised the president to engage in dialogue with protest leaders to address their concern. If you look at the front page of the Saturday Punch, federal government floods major cities with policemen ahead of 1 million man march. 1 million man march. Federal government floods major cities with policemen ahead of 1 million man march. Massive core deployment in flashpoints, protest venues nationwide. Organizers tackle federal government on rights violations, demand release of demonstrators. You find that headline on the front page of the Saturday Punch. I'll be back after this break. Stay tuned. tell us what was happening
I
there?
was coming back from the ceremony with the Queen. I was in front of the residence, the ambassador's residence. He believed in their politics and he liked their style very, very much. Their pictures are in all his homes, in Lagos and Ibadan. He has pictures of both of them.
So he had people he admired.
Absolutely.
And Gandhi was one of them.
Yes, and Pandit Nehru.
Pandit Nehru.
That's his mom. That's Papa's mom.
Oh.
He looks like her, doesn't he?
Wow.
My daughter.
So this is Boju Boju.
Hello, Emimo. That's me at The Hague. See, this gentleman is one of the Queen's chamberlains. He was the one that came to accompany me to the Queen's Palace to present my letters of credence. And he was a professor of internal medicine.
Okay.
And I thought he was deliberately chosen because there are several of them, you know, doing all sorts of things. But because I assume that it's because he's in the same line of work as me. That's why they chose him to be the one to come and accompany me. And on that day, there's a picture in there.
Okay.
The convoy. I was in a horse-drawn carriage, and it was led by two mounted policemen, and both of them were women. So I just thought the Dutch put a lot of detail into welcoming me, and from that day we worked very, very well together.
Good. You were saying that Papa had to travel.
Yes, he left his campaign and came to the UK.
That was during the 1983 campaign.
1983 campaign.
To see his grandchild.
To see his grandchild.
He was that passionate about family.
He was a doting father. And he was the one that put these two pictures here before he died. He placed these two pictures.
Wow.
Himself. He was a doting. This was somebody's birthday or wedding.
Okay.
And we were sitting.
House.
That's Yemi, that's me, I think.
Okay.
I can't remember who it
38 Ibadan Road.
I think it's one of the Shonoikis.
Okay.
And you will see their father in the hall. Chief Shonoiki was Papa's friend. You know, we make a distinction between his friends and political associates.
Okay.
Chief Shonoiki was his friend.
What's the difference between
He was a friend. A friend is a friend. You know, political associates, you know, they can come and go.
So who were his other friends?
There were few.
He had few friends.
Very few. He had few friends who we knew were friends. One of them was Chief Longe. He's in the picture in there.
Okay.
Very thick friends.
And this picture?
This picture, my brother's children.
Which of your brothers?
Wally.
Wally, okay.
And that is us.
Yeah. This is you here.
That's me.
And your sister?
That's Mrs. Shoyode, late Mrs. Shoyode. That's Mrs. Shoyode. And that's our brother, Shegun.
Shegun. Shegun was not married, right?
He wasn't.
Oh.
He was betrothed to be married to Miss Bola Williams, Chief Rotimi Williams' niece.
Oh. So this is the Awolowo children?
Yeah.
Chief and Mrs. Obafemi Awolowo's children. This picture was taken in 1951.
So that makes me 3 years old.
Okay.
I think I was angry with somebody or something.
Since the riots have started, and what we realize is that yes, initially people said it was a peaceful riot, but we have warned against it because we realize that there are individuals that are willing to take advantage of it to cause mayhem, and we can see clearly what has happened since it has commenced. Criminals have taken over, a lot of looting, a lot of stealing and all sorts happening. And besides that, we're also aware that I'm seeing, all of us have seen it, where some foreign flags have been flown within the sovereignty of Nigeria, and that is totally unacceptable. We are warning in clear terms, and the president has also said we should convey this, that we will not accept anybody, any individual flying any foreign flag in Nigeria. That is treasonable offense, and it will be viewed and treated as such. So nobody should allow himself to be used by any individual. Also the issue of coups. Nigeria is a sovereign nation, Nigeria is a democratic nation. All security agencies are here to defend democracy and make sure that democracy continues to strive. We will not accept anyone pushing or taking any action, seemingly or for whatever reason, to want to push for any change of government. Democracy is what we stand for. Democracy is what we continue to defend. For those of them flying flags, if you see a lot of them are kids being pushed to do that. We're following up with those ones that are sponsoring them, those that are pushing them, because you know the flags were also made. We identified those areas and we're going to take serious action against that. The president is clear on his instructions on for us not to accept anyone that wants to disrupt the peace and tranquility of Nigeria. And we are all standing here together to show Nigerians that we're working closely, we're working together in synergy to ensure that there's peace and tranquility in Nigeria. That we have assured Mr. President. I think we have cleared that. It has been cleared. I think it was just a misconception. They actually have seen those things and they wanted to clear them away from that area, and that's what was done. We have investigated thoroughly. The Chief of Army Staff is here. We have investigated thoroughly, and there is nothing like such. No member of the armed forces will fall into doing that, and it's very clear. Yeah, I think we've said that clearly, that the military is going to step in when it is out of ban. And we can see that for people, subversive elements to push individuals to carry Russian flags in Nigeria, Nigerian sovereignty, that is crossing the red line, and we will not accept that. And those ones who have done that will go in for the books, and they're going to be prosecuted. I'm sure you have seen them on TV, so the TV will show, because that's enough for you to see.
State Affairs with Edmondo Bilo is live.
Yes, that is the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, speaking on behalf of the military. Now, the flying of the Russian flag, it is the Russian flag, so don't conflict it. I've heard some people talking about, oh, it's the Nigerian Army flag. No, it is the Russian flag that was being flown in the north. You see how Nigeria responds to bad governance? Under Buhari, it was the South taking on Buhari NSAS protests. The Northerners did not come out. They kept calm. Okay? And bad governance, Southerners came out, but in Melo, the North took it up seriously. Tinubu is not from the North, so the North is angry with the South. Under Buhari, the South was angry with the North, and we want to burn down the South to bring down Buhari. You see that country. You see the country. You see what is going on in the North. Immediately I saw the Russian flag, I did not take it lightly. You know, Russia is expanding its influence in the West African sub-region. And Russia is not joking with it. We have military leadership in 3 West African states. in fact 4 West African states. Just that the guy in Guinea is quiet. It's like he's just playing neutral. But he is a military leader. And we now have the alliance of Sahel states. That is Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. And Russia is propping them up. So I now went back into my history book to recollect the Cold War in Africa. The Cold War was a competition between the United States and its allies and Russia and its allies. The Cold War led to the wars of the 1970s and 80s in Africa. So I picked up this book to just refresh my mind on what happened in Somalia. The book is entitled The State of Africa, A History of the Continent Since Independence. That is the book. Let me read from page 467. If we don't know what is coming, you see, if bad governance continues, another Cold War will be reenacted in Africa. It is already happening within the Sahel. If Tinubu, Sheyi Makinde and others do not give Nigeria good leadership, the influence of Russia will continue to rise. You know, America is working and watching. France has been disgraced in some of these countries. And you think France is not planning? That is a Cold War. So when the war between Russia and Ukraine started, I made a point. What is the implication for Africa? We are seeing that. Those flags being flown in the north. Don't take it for granted. President Tinubu should not take it for granted. So let me read what happened between Somalia and Russia with regard to the Ogaden region. Let me give you a brief. You have Somalia and you have Somaliland. There are Somalians in Kenya. There are Somalians in Ethiopia. There are Somalians in Eritrea. So when Siad Barre became the president of Somalia, he wanted to build a greater Somalia because he was angry. How come we have our people everywhere? And that was what the colonialists did to us. They just came, divided Africa the way they wanted. So you will see Somalians in Kenya. Normally, they ought to be with the main Somalia. So Siad Barre said he would unite all the Somalians in Kenya, in Eritrea, into one greater Somalia. So he launched a war to capture Ogaden. Ogaden is in Ethiopia, but Ogaden people are Somalians. So he launched a war to capture that territory from Ethiopia. Martin Meredith says in his book, judging that the time was right to take advantage of Mengistu's difficulties in Eritrea. Mengistu was the leader of Ethiopia. Are you in this class? This class we are going to walk down the history lane to see the consequences of the flying of the Russian flag in the north. So at this time, Mengistu was going through difficult time because there was a war between Eritrea and Ethiopia. That war was also as a result of the Cold War, the competition between America and Russia. Then it was the Soviet Union. But Russia was the head of the Soviet Union. Judging that the time was right to take advantage of Mengistu's difficulties in Eritrea, where half of the Ethiopian army was under siege, Siad Barre, the leader of Somalia, committed regular forces in support of Somali insurgents in the Ogaden. Within 2 months, the Somalis had won possession of most of the Ogaden. The war effort galvanized public opinion. Radio reports of the war progress was followed avidly. Community centers were converted into cottage factories for making uniforms. The dream of restoring lost lands seemed within reach. But Siad Barre's Ogaden adventure ran into trouble when the Russians decided to switch sides, preferring to back Mengistu's Marxist regime rather than his own. Russia supplied Siad Barre weapons to invade Ogaden. Why Siad Barre was winning the war and America was backing Ethiopia. That is the Cold War. America was backing Ethiopia. But Russia supplied very good arms to Siad Barre and he invaded Ogaden and captured a good chunk of the territory. Something happened. Russia just changed side and began to support Mengistu's of Eritrea. And America changed side and began to support Somalia. But what was happening? Africans were killing themselves. But America did not give enough backing to Siad Barre. America can be so calculative. So at the end of the day, Siad's adventure ran into trouble when the Russians decided to change sides, preferring to back Mengistu's Marxist regime rather than his own. When Siad asked for more Russian arms, he was turned down. Siad's response was to tear up Somali's treaty of friendship and cooperation with the Soviet Union and expelled all Russian personnel, but he was then left without the support of any major arms supplier. You see, African leaders know how to expel. In Burkina Faso has expelled French forces. Niger has expelled French forces. Mali has expelled French forces. And Russia has moved in. So if Tinubu was not worried before now, then his advisors are not advising him. Because immediately Russia moved into Mali. See, Russia is influential in Mali, in Niger, in Burkina Faso, in Central Africa Republic. And Russia is advancing. In fact, if Chad is not careful, Russia will move into Chad. And these are Nigerian neighbors. Tinubu should be very careful. Tinubu should be very careful. Tinubu wanted to invade Niger. Why did he stop? I think later he got to know the implications. That what is happening in West Africa is another world power politics. If you want to study world power politics in Africa in contemporary times, I recommend this book I'm reading from, The State of Africa by Martin Meredith. A history of the continent since independence. Here you will see where we are coming from. And our leaders don't understand. How do these guys come in? Our leaders don't govern well. So you now create room from there for them to come in. African states are not well governed. They are not well governed. And when you are not well governed, you now create rooms for these guys to come in. West Africa is unraveling, and Nigeria must not go back to the military. I'm looking at Tinubu's foreign policy. I'm studying it keenly. But at this point, I can say his foreign policy is not robust enough. It's not robust enough. Because these guys are calling our bluff with ease. Niger called our bluff with ease. Tinubu just ranted and ranted. Nothing happened. Nothing will happen. Your foreign policy posturing and power is dependent on the strength of your politics and economy. That is what would decide your influence at the international system, not what you say. Nigeria is bedeviled by poverty. It cannot fight a war. Nigeria is bedeviled by poor governance. It cannot fight a war. You know, to win a war, you need to have a robust economy. China can comfortably fight a war. America, Russia. But you even see that Russia is struggling in Ukraine. Look at what happened recently in Burkina Faso. You know, the leader of Burkina Faso is Captain Ibrahim Traore, that young military leader. I can see he's been celebrated in Africa. Even many Nigerians admire him. I don't hate him either. He reminds me of Thomas Sankara. You know, Sankara was the leader of Burkina Faso, that young leader that wanted to redefine Burkina Faso. He was such a good guy. Because recently I got a book on Sankara. Let me even know more of Sankara. He was such a good guy, brilliant. And he was ready to reform. You know, for him to reform Burkina Faso, his first battle was against France. You know what France does to its colonial territories is to dominate them. France has been controlling its colonial territories over time. But when Sankara came, he didn't like it. So he wanted to kick out France. So that was his first battle. So for about 3-4 years, he was redefining Burkina Faso the way this young man, Captain Traore, is trying to do. So he reminds me of Thomas Sankara. But what happened to Sankara? You know, the French eliminated him. Thomas Sankara's good friend was Blaise Compaoré. Blaise Compaoré was his guy. So France used Blaise Compaoré, who was a military guy too, to assassinate his friend. You see, that's how what power politics is played. So they took out Thomas Sankara. And Blaise became the leader of Burkina Faso and then stopped all the reforms and ran to France. France began to control him. So with the support of France, he governed Burkina Faso for more than 24 years until he was removed 3 years ago in a revolution. Before the military came back in Burkina Faso, there was a revolution that removed Blaise Compaoré. Right? You see, in my discussion with Professor Ademola Araoye, we talked about it. What then happened in Côte d'Ivoire? You know, there was Gbagbo. Gbagbo was sent to prison in what court? Who sent him to prison? And they now brought in the present leader of Côte d'Ivoire. But let me not complicate the analysis. Let me remain in Burkina Faso. So Blaise Compaoré, Thomas Sankara, and you know, Burkina Faso is a landlocked country. It has no access to the sea. You know, that also weakens the country. It has no access to the sea. That's why some people are saying, if you want Biafra, do you have access to the sea? That is why Ojukuso wanted the Niger Delta to be part of Biafra, to have easy access to the sea. So when Nigeria was able to cut off Biafra from the sea, the war was lost at that point. But if you also look at it, perhaps Biafra have access to the sea, even in the southeast, to places like Uguta. Let's come back to Burkina Faso. So they took out Thomas Sankara. They took him out. Are they trying to take out Captain Ibrahim Traore at the moment? Look at what happened recently. An attack reportedly killed more than 100 soldiers in an army base in Burkina Faso. So it snowballed into speculation about unrest in the army in a country where the military has been in power since 2022. The leader of the military, that is Captain Ibrahim Traore, has since appeared on state TV in an attempt to debunk a crisis in the military. Do not forget, Burkina Faso has been battling Islamic insurgents for several years, and about half the country is outside government control. Islamists are controlling more than half of Burkina Faso. That is a threat to Nigeria. Islamists, and they are moving into Nigeria. You saw the report that came in, that they are coming in with weapons. And they are controlling more than half of Burkina Faso. Who is sponsoring those Islamists? Who is sponsoring them? Where are they getting those weapons to confront the government of Burkina Faso? So now that France has been disgraced, don't be surprised. France might take the side of the Islamists and supply them weapons to deal with Captain Traoré. That is how international system works. So they will keep Captain Traoré busy. Insurgents will be taking him on. He will be busy. He will not have time for good governance. So after about 3-4 years, he won't be able to do anything because he will be using the resources to fight. In that case, they will now sponsor uprising that he has failed in governance. It's a complicated system. So at some point I was asking, was Tinubu dancing to the tune of France? Because he didn't want Wahala within his borders. But the Wahala is there already. Because Russia is there. And the flag has moved into Nigeria. That's how it starts. Remember, before the military took over in Burkina Faso, Russian flags were being flown already. Russian flags were being flown already. And now Russian flags are being flown in Nigeria. But Nigeria will be a big headache. Nigeria is not a small country. Nigeria is big. So will America be watching? You know, America has been calm. You know, Joe Biden's foreign policy on Africa is not that active. If Kamala Harris wins, what we should do. So I'm looking at her own foreign policy ideas. So I will pay keen interest to what she will be saying during the foreign policy debate. Is Africa key? But China is quiet. You know, China don't fight. China's war is economic. They construct railways for you and hold you to ransom with loans. So China does not fight with guns, but they fight with economic ideas. So China is there. Hello. So, after about 100 soldiers were killed in Burkina Faso, what was Russia's response? The two attacks came about a week after Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov visited Burkina Faso and announced plans to send more military instructors to the country. Having cultivated very close relations with Burkina Faso and other Sahel countries in recent years, Russia is already reportedly taking steps to ensure that Captain Traoré's administration remains stable. You know the worst thing that will happen to Traoré? If Russia pulls out of Burkina Faso, he will collapse immediately. If Russia stops backing Captain Traoré, he will collapse immediately. He won't have the resources to remain in power. There will be total chaos. But France will respond. So more Russian mercenaries are being flown from Mali to protect the Burkinabe leader in the aftermath of that attack. So Mali has become like a major base for Russia. You know, the Wagner mercenary, that Wagner group. Let's open the lines. Let's begin to do this analysis. The military, the North is trying to wake the military. Come take over. Come take over. And the military likes power because power is sweet. The military likes power. And the military is saying, no, don't do that. It's treasonable. That's what the military was saying then in Burkina Faso. No, it's treasonable. But they've taken over. Ghana is scared because Ghana shares border with Burkina Faso. Because the revolutionary leader in Nigeria, in the West African sub-region now, seems to be Captain Ibrahim Traoré. He's revolutionary in outlook. He reminds me of Thomas Sankara. He reminds me of Kaduna Nzogu. He has that spirit, but he's quite calm. But I'm keenly watching the guy in Guinea that is not saying anything. Because I'm more interested in that guy that don't talk. There's a military guy in Guinea that is not saying a word. He's so calm. He's not taking the side of ECOWAS. He's not with the new alliance created by Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. What is he planning? So when you see a man is quiet and is in charge, watch closely. The lines are open. Let's talk. Let's talk. 080 915 51055 070694 93000. What do you think about the flying of the Russian flag in Nigerian territory? Hello, good morning. Now, good morning. What are the implications of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger Republic withdrawal?
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Edmond.
Yes, good morning.
Yeah, I'm very, very happy to be in the class of Edmond Obilo School of Politics and Power.
Thank you.
My name is Solomon. I'm from Olele. Mr. Edmond, when you look at what is going on in the country, I think it is quite hard. But Mr. Edmond, there is one conversation that I think we should begin to pay attention to this conversation. What is this conversation? This conversation is going on online. And I want to call attention to it. It's between the Yoruba and the Southeast. This conversation is not healthy and it is very, very dangerous for the survival of this country. Having said this, when you look at the history, counter Coup, the Coup, you will discover there is this dichotomy between the North and the South. When you look at the reality we are facing now, the origin of Boko Haram started when the Southern was in the power. You can see them boldly, you see some northern governors supporting the idea of Boko Haram underground. After the Buhari era, you see the Sunday the rose and the card of this force, they rose up. And last week, I think this week, I was watching a national television. I saw the Ango Abdullahi. He said Nigeria expired. We're talking about 1940 amalgamation. I think these are the conditions that Nigerians we are shying away from this conversation. And it is a reality in this country because Nigeria refuses to be a nation. If either we start talking about this topic, why are these people raising a Russia flag at this point in time? In Savannah, at the helm of affairs, they are saying Alaba, Alaba. What is the meaning of Alaba? Mr. Edmond, sir, we did not come and call for Arewa Republic. The way the Sunday Igbo are calling for the Republic, the way the Ambikano are calling for the Biafra. I think these are the conversations we need to look into it because we refuse to be a nation. And we cannot shy away from this topic because in every state of our life, keep reflecting ethnic. I think we need to do something about it. Thank you so much and bless you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, we are not shying away from the conversation. We are having the conversation. But we need to moderate the conversation. These things are there. You know, the North shouted Araba after the first coup, the Kaduna Nzogu coup. You see, I've been going back to reflect on that coup. If you noticed, there's something I saw last year And I said, okay, let me do a history of the war, because I know it's going to come back, and it's coming back. You know, I was in my studies. I said the ethnic question will be more intense, especially after that election. When I saw what happened in Lagos State, I wasn't going to sweep it under the carpet. I knew that Tinubu Obi campaign has created a conflict between the Igbo nation and the Yoruba nation. But I was not saying, is this competition going to be healthy? The Yoruba Igbo competition, is it going to be healthy? I was not looking at their educational advancement, their industrial power. So the Yoruba nation now have a headway. One, the Yoruba man is the president. Obasanjo had governed. The Igbo has not governed. And I went back to say, the Igbo governed. You know, if you go on my YouTube page, I want you to listen to an interview. I'll bring that part of that interview. I started researching on the history of the army. How the Igbos dominated the officer corps. The Igbo and the Yoruba dominated the officer corps. At some point, out of the 40 major that were trained professionally, about 24 were Igbos. And I was speaking with the author of the book, Ironsi. I said, is the January coup an Igbo coup? He made the point, if it was an Igbo coup, it could have been so easy, nothing could have stopped it. Because Igbo officers were occupying the top positions. Just that it was led by some Igbo officers. But it was not an Igbo thing. It was just a clique. Because if it was an Igbo coup, it could have been so easy. Because the top officers were Igbos, Ojuku, Ironsi. And they were Yoruba. They were not Fulani top officers, really. Few of them. Few. But when you come to the ground troops, the boys on the field, it was dominated by the North. Mostly by the North. The boys who would fire the guns. But the men who would give the orders. Most of the boys that Nzogu used to occupy the home of Ahmadu Bello and took him down were mostly northern officers. They were mostly northern soldiers. He just moved them and gave them the order, do this, and they did it. But the officers were Igbos. These things will play up again. And they are playing out. You know, I want to look back at the competition between Awolowo and Azikiwe. In fact, it's like what is reflecting again. So when I say go back into history, if you are interested in the future of Nigeria, I know the point I'm making. History is repeating itself. But for the competition at the moment between the Igbo and the Yoruba, I have no fear. Because of their level of education, it will be healthy. Depending on how it is managed by the political leadership from both sides. You know, Tinubu made a statement talking about ethnic bigotry. He was speaking to those who are challenging the Igbos to leave Lagos. But so let's listen to that speech. It was a speech delivered. Remember, we are talking about Russia, and we are linking it to domestic politics. We have created fissures. We have created holes. Russia will be moving if we don't check it. Russia is desperate for dominance. And the United States will move in. You see, the United States recently gave some contracts in Zambia. In fact, in the Horn of Africa, Joe Biden launched a big economic stimulus program through construction. Don't look at it as just construction. America is trying to dominate, to counter Russia from East African end. You know, William Ruto recently accused Ford Foundation from America of sponsoring the riot in Kenya. So America is trying to come in from the East African end. Boom! Something happens. You know, African countries are weak. Nigeria is a fragile state. Listen to President Tinubu.
to threaten any section of this country, be warned. The law will catch up with you. There is no place for ethnic bigotry or such threats in the Nigeria we seek to build. Our democracy progresses when the constitutional rights of every Nigerian are respected and protected. Our law.
You know, Tinubu there has made a right statement as the president. But if you reflect on what happened in Lagos during his election and how the political leadership in Lagos encouraged it, many persons were disenfranchised. They were not allowed to vote on the basis of their ethnic ground. But Tinubu now as president is being politically correct. But in terms of action, the political leadership triggered it. You know, thugs were sponsored to stop certain persons from voting in Lagos. That if you are not voting for this person, don't come out. Oh, don't come out. It was real. And who was going to be the main beneficiary? The APC and the Tinubu system. Even the Labour Party candidate, who is a son of a Yoruba man, who was told he's not a good Yoruba person because his mother is an Igbo. And it became an issue. But Tinubu now as president will say no, but he has encouraged it. So you see where hypocrisy comes in leadership. Obi must have also encouraged it in his own way. Religion. You know, Obi was moving from one church to the other. One church to the other. Trying to galvanize the Christendom. You know, trying to throw up the religious question. Even in the southeast, you could have also seen some kind of ethnic domination on other tribes. Because Obi once swept the southeast. So the political leadership encouraged, but when they now come into power, you see them making political correct statements. But their actions don't reflect those statements. So that is why those conflicts will exist. They will exist. They will continue to exist. And as they exist, Russia is watching. The flag has been flown. That was an affront on the Nigerian state, an affront on the sovereignty of the Nigerian state. But because of the weakness of the Nigerian state, it cannot confront Russia. It doesn't have what it takes to confront Russia. It doesn't have it. It doesn't have the military wares to confront Russia. It doesn't have the strong economy to stand up to them, but it has the size. Because of the size, it will not be easy to dominate it. Let's open the lines. Call the radio station. Let's talk.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Edmond.
Yes, good morning.
Yes, my name is Eze. Okay, I'm calling from thanks for the. I just want to keep in respect of the so-called competition between the East and the West. I don't think there's no competition like that. What I think we're seeing is the Lagos political class. That is the Lagos political class, the people controlling Lagos. They are the ones that are doing something like the Indians of competition. There's not like that. The way this APC particular, you would think that Obasanjo was not like a Yoruba man. Obasanjo, a Yoruba man, was the president of Nigeria for 8 years. Did you see this kind of, what do we call it, so-called competition? It is not. It is the Lagos political class ideology. So it is not general to the West. You can see the last individual to me, where did this start from? The people discuss, where did this start from? Lagos. The last election, almost everything was in Lagos. We voted in Ibadan. Nobody tell you if you are not, you don't vote. People voted in Lagos too. You just see that kind of, if you are not voting, well, it's a Lagos thing. So I don't think we should generalize it and make it seem like it is a Western thing. It is not. It is is a political class in Lagos, and that is their weapon of holding on to power in Lagos. So it's not a weapon. Look at it. The other part for PDP. That is the same thing they do. What they do to River Roads, what they do to other people, that their parents, some of their parents were even able. If you are not in the political class of Lagos, even if you are 100% from a Yoruba man, once you are not in their class, anybody will charge you to be a stooge of somebody else. That's what it is. So I don't want to generalize and say Igbos and Yorubas are having competition. No, it is not. It is the Lagos political class that has spreading it and making it look like there's a conflict. Look at this last even when you video Mr. Edmond, you know this there's a lady for nature that came out and they're telling now you will go back. Almost the demonstration happened in the West here. Did you see that? So let's be specific, because if they keep making it look like it's a West East country, we will be listening. There are a lot of West people in the West, they don't go through all these things. Even in the West, now there's a lot of people in the West that don't go through this. But once that is politics, Lagos political class will raise that flag.
Thank you.
And it's not it's a no, it is not it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your contribution. But let me also make this point. If it happens in Lagos, the epicenter of the Nigerian state, you see, you can bring a government down by just occupying Lagos. So Lagos is like everything. You see, if you want to look at what happened in Bangladesh, the students occupied Dhaka and they brought down the prime minister. There's a revolution going on in Bangladesh now. More than 100 students were killed by the army because they wanted to pull down the prime minister. So if you occupy Abuja and Lagos, you can bring down a government. So when it is happening at the epicenter, it is real. It filters in because it's the center of press. It's the center of commerce. But I also understand that overgeneralization can be dangerous. So I take that point. But if it's happening in Lagos, it is key. Because the president is from Lagos. If it is happening within his domain, it is key. And competition can be healthy. You know, because that was the basis of the First Republic. The structure allowed for competition between the North, the West, and the East. Just that the North was too big. But you see that healthy competition gave rise to development in the Eastern region, the Western region, and the Northern region. So when I chose the word competition, we can make it positive. And if the Yoruba nation, because there is the Yoruba nation, and the Igbo nation decide to advance in unison, take it or leave it, no Russia or America can dominate that spirit. Because you're talking about advanced civilization. I've been studying Yoruba civilization. It's so advanced. Just that in recent time, its political leaders are so backward in thinking that they refuse to advance Yoruba civilization to the peak of human development. But somehow, I see some sons and daughters of Yoruba land emerging to advance the civilization of this beautiful people so that Africa would compete. If you read Awolowo's lecture in the Gold Coast, the need for ideological reappraisal, you would understand the point I make this morning. Stay tuned. It is Splash 105.5 FM, the Integrity Station. This is the class of history, politics, and power. State affairs. Edmondo Bilo is here.
State Affairs with Edmondo Bilo is live.
Tell us what was happening.
I was coming back from the ceremony with the Queen. I was in front of the residence, the ambassador's residence. He believed in their politics and he liked their style very much. Their pictures are in all his homes, in Lagos and Ibadan. He has pictures of both of them.
So he had people he admired.
Absolutely.
And Gandhi was one of them.
Yes, and Pandit Nehru.
Pandit Nehru.
That's his mom. That's Papa's mom.
Oh.
He looks like her, doesn't he?
Wow.
My daughter.
So this is Boju Boju.
That's me at The Hague. See, this gentleman is one of the Queen's chamberlains. He was the one that came to accompany me to the Queen's palace to present my letters of credence. And he was a professor of internal medicine.
Okay.
And I thought he was deliberately chosen because there are several of them, doing all sorts of things. But because I assume that it's because he's in the same line of work as me. That's why they chose him to be the one to come and accompany me. And on that day, there's a picture in there.
Okay.
The convoy. I was in a horse-drawn carriage, and it was led by two mounted policemen, and both of them were women. So I just thought the Dutch put a lot of detail into welcoming me, and from that day we worked very, very well together.
Good. You were saying that Papa had to travel.
Yes, he left his campaign and came to the UK.
That was during the 1983 campaign.
1983 campaign.
To see his grandchild.
To see his grandchild.
He was that passionate about family.
He was a doting father. And he was the one that put these two pictures here before he died. He placed these two pictures.
Wow.
Himself.
Was
he was a doting. This was somebody's birthday or wedding.
Okay.
And we were
At
sitting.
House.
That's Yemi, that's me, I think.
Okay.
I can't remember who is it.
38 Ibadan Road.
I think it's one of the Shonoikis.
Okay.
And you will see their father in the hall. Chief Shonoiki was Papa's friend. We make a distinction between his friends and political associates.
Okay.
Chief Shonoiki was his friend.
What's the difference between
He was a friend. A friend is a friend. Political associates, they can come and go.
So who were his other friends?
There were few.
He had few friends.
Very few. He had few friends who we knew were friends. One of them was Chief Longe. He's in the picture in there.
Okay.
Very thick friends.
And this picture?
This picture, my brother's children.
Which of your brothers?
Wally.
Wale, okay.
And that is us.
Yeah. This is you here.
That's me.
And your sister?
That's Mrs. Shoyode, late Mrs. Shoyode. That's Mrs. Shoyode. And that's our brother, Shegun.
Shegun. Shegun was not married, right?
He wasn't.
Oh.
He was betrothed to be married to Miss Bola Williams, Chief Rotimi Williams' niece.
Oh. Also hostile to the Chinese personality.
No, the Chinese, it has, okay. Normally, yes, if we are going to adopt the Hobbesian scenario, it is dog eat dog. But each dog must learn to protect itself. The Chinese have protected themselves well. The Indians have protected themselves well. The Japanese have protected themselves well. Africa, unfortunately, has been prostrate.
Professor Arauye, you made the points at the acknowledgement page of this book. You said the African is culpable for the parlous state of his affairs.
Yes, absolutely.
Including you?
Well, I wouldn't consider myself as part of those. If I were, we wouldn't be having this conversation. That's the difference. But Africa has been a victim of its own negligence. That is just it.
How?
The African leader is not forged on the anvil of African existential challenges. The African leader is motivated, driven by a personal partisan agenda for self-aggrandizement. And because of that, the African leader is prepared to liaise, ally himself with the very historic traducers of his own people for as long as he can get that small cup of pottage.
And he gets it regularly, right?
And he gets it regularly. And that's why the evolution of Africa up to point is so to say a constant stream of irrationality and absurdity.
Destroy the African personality, will give you loan.
Give away everything. Give away everything. And then later on we'll come to the two critical concepts of deflection and defection that are linked.
State Affairs with Edmondo Bilo is live.
You know, my interview with Professor Ademola Arauye is one interview I enjoyed. It's a deep interview. It's not just that kind of interview you just listen and just think you've understood it. You have to listen again. Because the African personality is such that works against the advancement of Africa. And you see it in almost all African leaders, except the early leaders. You know, among all French territories, there was one France could not dominate. That is Guinea. Sékou Touré refused the domination of Guinea. In fact, France almost frustrated that country's independence. But Sékou Touré had his feet down and ensured independence for Guinea and refused to play along with France. So that is one francophone country that is not under the bondage of France. Perhaps the reason the Guinean military leader is calm and quiet, because Sékou Touré fought for total independence, yet he couldn't get it because total independence can be relative. But his partner was Kwame Nkrumah. So you could see that partnership between Guinea and Ghana was based on Pan-Africanism, Africa first. That is why Professor Areoye's interview is an interview you should listen to. We'll be uploading the interview soon on my YouTube channel. But the interview will not give you everything. His book, The Ghettos of Pan-Africanism, you look at this book, The Ghettos of Pan-Africanism, will give you enough knowledge to understand Pan-Africanism, the African personality, and the future. You know, the future can be predictable from the past. Yes, you may not be able to predict everything, but you can predict it. So I recommend this book to you, The Ghettos of Pan-Africanism by Ademola Araoye. You get this book on udarabooks.com. udarabooks.com. You can also get it through my WhatsApp number 080 999 18449. That's my WhatsApp number. It's not the number to call. If you are interested in this book and you want to get a copy, and getting the copies, you want to buy a copy. I see some people are misinterpreting it. The books are for sale. Okay? That's not to say we don't give out books, but we'll give out books. A lot of books. But I don't come here to announce it. So by the time I go through some of the messages, I know those are give out books. So we give out some of those books. The Ghettos of Pan-Africanism. Don't ask for a book. Sometimes I go on my Facebook and see how consistent you have been. Look at your analysis. I don't just give you a book because you are asking for it. I stopped doing that because I've seen one or two persons have given book. They didn't read it. They just drop it at home. Because I've seen them again. So I'll just say how far. I'll just ask a question. Because I can't just give you a book and you go and keep it. The reason I'm giving you a book is for you to enhance your knowledge. Yes, you may not be able to read all the pages of the book. I understand that. But when you are given a book, read some pages. You can later come back to it. How do I give you a book and you just keep it? We bought this book with money. So I recommend this book to you by Professor Ademola Araoye. But the book of the day is The State of Africa by Martin Meredith, A History of the Continent Since Independence. You need to get this book if you want to understand Africa. And understanding that doesn't just come immediately. You know, sometimes you need to study this book, study the others. Because the more I read this book, the more I discover I don't know enough. The more I discover I don't know enough. So I want you to have a copy of this book, The State of Africa by Martin Meredith. You'll get it on udarabooks.com or through my WhatsApp number. That is 08039918449. The State of Africa is the book of the day, a history of the continent since independence. It's a book that will open your mind to what is going on now. Then, I've always talked about this book, but I've not mentioned it here really. The Strategy and Tactics of the People. One of Awolowo's best books. The Strategy and Tactics of the People. Hey, if you can lay your hands on that book, get it. The Strategy and Tactics of the People is how to develop a land. And you can get it by contacting me on WhatsApp. Or you contact me on WhatsApp. In fact, get Awolowo's books. If you have Awolowo's books, there are about 16 of them. But I have about 13. If you want Awolowo's books, you see, study those books. There's something about Awolowo. He's special. I'm not talking about his perfection. Can't be perfect. But Awolowo is special. He knew what governance is. He knew how to develop a people. And that is what we don't have anymore. Just have guys who just come, build one block of classroom, construct one road. They don't know the basis of development. Development is about the mind. It's about the people. So when you read Awo, there's something that will happen to you. When you read Awolowo's books, there's something that happens to you. That's why sometimes I feel Awolowo can be a deity. Some humans are just special. Awolowo was one of the special ones. He had his flaws, no doubt. But his depth of mind is unimaginable. When I read him, I just feel how empty I am. And it challenges my mind. If you read Awo on the Nigerian Civil War, My March Through Prison, his autobiography, My Early Life, Path to Nigerian Freedom, you just know a man. He wrote some of this book before he became leader of the Western region. He knew what he wanted. He knew how to go about it. If you read Thoughts on the Nigerian Constitution, have you read Travails of Democracy, Voice of Courage, collection of Awo's speeches, Voice of Reason, Voice of Wisdom? You need to read these books. His lecture in Good Cause, The Need for Ideological Reappraisal. Contact me if you need Awolowo's books. Some of them are on udarabooks.com, but some of them are not there, but we have them. So you can contact me on WhatsApp 080-999-18449. The theme of the class is nationwide protest, the call for military coup in the north. But some in the south want military coup. Because I've been on Twitter reading comments. You see, some persons are happy. Let the military come. The military comes with no good in Nigeria. With no good. No good. If you read Obasanjo's Not My Will, Obasanjo was talking about, you see, that's one man you should also take for granted. I don't know. There's just something about him. I think he's a brilliant guy. But somebody said he can be devilishly brilliant. That's somebody. He's one brilliant guy that we don't pay enough attention to. There's something about Obasanjo. You know, if you read his work, and the other person said he can be rascally brilliant. You know, when you begin to define a man in different, he can be mafially brilliant. If you read My Watch, at that point he can be mafially brilliant. If you read Not My Will, he was talking about how how Murtala Muhammad was killed. His exploit as a military leader. Why are you not reading those books? Why? You know, sometimes when you say a big pamio, see, a big pami can also be a product of a poor mindset. When you are constantly hungry, every time you are looking for food, just all your life is like you are always looking for food. You can't pay rent. Sometimes it's also your mind. Yes, government has a role to play in your poverty, no doubt. But sometimes the power of your mind can lift you out of poverty. The power of your mind can lift you out of poverty. And reading is one way to develop the mind. But of what's importance, you know, I wrote a story of a young man who I met at the junction. He was so hungry. He wanted me to buy him akara. But I gave him a book. He went to sell my book to the woman selling akara. For akara. So he gave. But the special thing about him was that he tore the first half of the book and gave it to the woman. Did not give the woman the other part. That's when I saw him. I said, guy, what happened to the first part of this book? He said he sold it for akara to eat. That he was so hungry that when he had to eat, so that he would be able to read the other part of the book. So what he did was that he has read the first half pages And after reading them and digesting it, he needs to survive to finish the book. So he sold that part. I said, okay, that makes some sense. That is creative way to survive. Just that he cannot make reference to that book again. Because after he eating the akara, he will sell the other part. So after selling the book, he will be hungry again. Okay. Let's take some calls. Let's talk 080915 510 055 080915 51055. Good morning.
Good morning, Edmund.
Good morning.
I want to speak to Laman Olade Kubaranwa.
Hey, Baba is calling.
I have listened attentively from inception to the erudite lecture. Let me call it lecture. If you remember, when the general election, 2023 election was approaching, and I was glad that Peter Obi emerged from the east, Atiku from the north, and Tinubu from the west. What I said that day was that I'm afraid they are reverting to the first subject. Then it was Awolowo for the day, as India is for the day, and the Banoa for the north. But one thing that struck me most was Peter Obi beating Tinubu in Lagos. And in fact, there is nothing anybody wants to say then to condemn the election and say it's getting clear and say nothing to anybody say. Because I knew that it was the true vote of the people. Now, what is happening in Nigeria here is really wonderful. And I'm very grateful that you really all what you said about Pan-Africanism, that is the message about Africa, Burkina Faso, there is no doubt about it, that the Russians are trying to invade Nigeria, and Tinubu has to really get as big. Not Tinubu alone, everybody in Nigeria should be very careful this time around. Because we really proved it thing here. There was a place where they were hosting Russian flags, and it culminated in the government of that country being today. So everybody should be very careful this time around. So I am using this medium to appeal. So there is one thing I don't want to advise that you document all these media and let it be available to Tinubu, let it be available to Nima today, and most of the government. If you put for top of them, they should what we have always been saying has done to them. I believe it should make them to change and they should take their advice. Edmund, God bless you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Baba. That's Chief Bolaniwa. Thank you. Thank you for calling the radio station. Let's take some messages here. Remember, this is the class of politics and power. There's a message from official Moji Morire. Moji is saying on X, I can say it is the Russian flag, but in my own view, do they mean a change of government? I guess they are calling for communism or socialism. You know, what Russia represents in West Africa at this moment is change of government, military. And they were calling for a coup. They were telling the military guys to take over. Have you not seen the videos, Moji? So Moji says, but I am the USSR. I am the USSR to be socialist. But the new Russia to me is not capitalist. You know, Moji, you have been calling for this socialism. I also have my caution. Have you wondered why China moved away from Mao Zedong's communism. You know, China was in deep poverty after that civil war. Even after the Cultural Revolution, China was in deep poverty. Communism wasn't bringing the solution. Economically, it has brought in the political solution. But economically, China was falling. So even before the death of Mao, a crisis was going to erupt because of the economic hardship in China. Should I say luckily Mao had to die and one of his boys took over, Deng Xiaoping. What did Deng Xiaoping do? He redefined communism, what some people have called state development capitalism. You see, that's how great thinkers think. He launched state development capitalism in China. He borrowed some ideas from America. They brought in capitalism moderated by the state. The politics is communism. The economy is capitalism. But because the politics is communism, that political influence mediates that capitalism. And they called it state development capitalism. They opened China up. American companies moved in. And China began to steal technology. You know, but our own will be calling for foreign investors. We don't learn anything. They will just go, boom. We've not learned anything. We can't build anything. That is why I'm saying, you know, we've been talking about military. The biggest competition in the world now is technological war. What some have called technological decoupling. Nigeria is not in that war. Nigeria is not in that space. Is it UI that will produce students that will be in that space, or IFE, or LAUTECH? Those schools are underfunded. When you underfund the university system, you can't compete at that level. You can't compete. So technological decoupling, we are getting to a point where these guys can cut us off the internet if they want to. And you see, if you cut somebody off the internet now, it's like you are in darkness, blackout. We don't have that technological base. You know, you are using, most of your policemen, Kalashnikov, they are using AK-47, Kalashnikov. Can you manufacture them? Why was Obama able to frustrate Jonathan? With ease. It was just with weapons. He frustrated Jonathan. And Jonathan was lamenting bitterly in his book. Frustrated him. So when Buhari came in, it was not just local politics. The international system, America wanted Jonathan out. So they just needed somebody in Buhari, and they gave us disaster. Bam. We are paying for it. Tinubu will keep lamenting. You know, Buhari took our economy back into the doldrum. Tinubu said he's trying to bring it out, or is it pushing it back into the doldrum? You know, Buhari kept saying, I'm going to bring it out. Bring it out. He was pushing it in. Tinubu is also saying, I'll bring it out. As he's trying to bring it out, the hungrier we become. As he's trying to bring it out, the poorer we become. Mr. President, are you pushing it in? Are you? Because we are used to you guys pushing it in. You know, Jonathan kept saying, I will restore it. It seems the leaders that come before the others are always better. You know, sometimes when I look at it, I say perhaps Obasanjo was the best too. And if Yar'Adua had the chance, he could have been better than Jonathan. Jonathan was better than Buhari. Will Buhari be better than Tinubu? And that will be disaster upon disaster if Buhari becomes better than Tinubu. But we will give Tinubu the benefit of doubt. You know, 1 year gone, after second year, and nothing happens. That means nothing will happen. Because he will begin to plan for election. And he will be totally distracted. How come election distracts governance? Have we worked on that? You know, the performance of the president most times is also equivalent to the performance of the governors. Because the presidency controls more than half of federal allocation. So the direction the presidency takes will also affect states. Because Tinubu is trying to say, go and hold your governors, hold your governors. The policy direction of the federal government directly affect the states. Because the federal government is the behemoth here. In fact, the states have been weakened with the recent local government autonomy judgment. So you now have a very powerful federal center. But you can also use that power well if you wanted. Let's see how far Tinubu will go. So Moji, have made the point about communism. Let's look at this subject before we talk more. I was asking, what is the implication of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger Republic withdrawal from ECOWAS? One of the implications is what we saw in the north, the flying of Russian flags. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger Republic said goodbye to the Economic Community of West African States earlier this year. These countries currently are governed by military. They claim they are leaving ECOWAS because ECOWAS is deviating from its founding principles. In a joint statement earlier this year, the military leaders, Captain Ibrahim Traore, Burkina Faso, Brigadier General Abdulrahman Tiani of Niger Republic, and Colonel Assimi Goïta of Mali, said they felt ECOWAS is doing more harm than good. The statement highlights the initial aspirations and subsequent disillusionment of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger with the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. The statement they released emphasized the original vision of integration, brotherhood, solidarity, mutual aid, peace, and development that led to the creation of ECOWAS in 1975. However, after 49 years of existence, the leaders of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger expressed regret and disappointment that ECOWAS has strayed from its founding principles and became influenced by foreign powers. You know, Niger is also dominated by Hausas and Fulani. So when you say Niger is a country, for the man in Sokoto, they don't see Niger as a country. They see Niger as their blood. But there is no border. They walk in and walk out. Even Buhari said he was going to stay in Niger so that nobody will come and disturb him. Because Daura is close to Niger. They are brothers. They are Hausas. They are Fulanis. It's the colonialists that came to demarcate our people with borders that kept brothers in different countries. Not just in Africa alone, also in Mexico. If you go to Mexico, there are some Mexicans who ought to be, there are Americans who ought to be in Mexico, but the way the border was created, they now found themselves in America. It's also everywhere. But what have we done with it? The leaders of Burkina Faso, Mali, criticized ECOWAS for failing to provide assistance in combating terrorism and insecurity. They frowned at the imposition of sanctions that they deemed illegitimate and harmful on their countries when they tried to handle things effectively by toppling the inefficient democratic leaderships that watched helplessly as terrorists ran riot on their countries. In response to this situation, the heads of states of these countries assert their sovereignty and announced the immediate withdrawal of their countries from ECOWAS, citing the need to address the expectations, concerns, and aspirations of their population. So what we are seeing is the breakdown of African brotherhood. That is what is going on. That breakdown of African brotherhood. And once you break it, you bring in foreign predators who will prey on the people of Africa as they've always done. If the Nigerian leadership were to be foresighted, by now, Nigeria will be the giant that will help these African countries to develop. But as we speak, Nigeria is not a giant. Nigeria is a sleeping country that cannot influence countries within its borders. If you went to study the Obasanjo Murtala Mohammed foreign policy, the way we were pulling our strengths in Angola, in Namibia, we don't have that kind of vibrant foreign policy anymore. But at the end of the day, we wasted money in those foreign policies because they didn't bring anything in return. We invested billions in South Africa. At some point, xenophobic attacks were orchestrated on the people of Nigeria and other African countries, saying, go home, go home. And the blacks in South Africa orchestrated it. It's against the spirit of Pan-Africanism. Now, let me explain that spirit of African brotherhood. I will explain it with what Kwame Nkrumah did with education in Ghana. So let's bring in Professor Ademola Araoye. He's going to talk about Nkrumah's education system because this prof was born in Ghana. He was born in Ghana. So he experienced what Kwame Nkrumah did with education in Ghana. Let's listen. Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown by the military in 1966. What then happened to that education system he created?
Well, the educational system Kwame Nkrumah created was solid in terms of the substantive contents of what you learned. Not only that, in the process of forging the African identity, the African personality, which was central to the vision of Kwame Nkrumah, you were also exposed to very iconic representations of his own ideas in teachers that taught you. You had people who were dedicated. You entered Ghanaian secondary schools, primary schools, and you knew the teachers were well trained. They knew what they were about. It was not a transactional, professional relationship. These were dedicated icons of the vision of Nkrumah's idea of the African personality.
So this vision was pursued using education.
Yes, education became an instrument for the pursuit of the vision of Kwame Nkrumah.
Can we call this indoctrination?
Yes, well, yeah, in a sense, when you get so exposed to intense ideas, and then the environment in itself is configured to validate the ideas that you are being exposed to. You can call it a form of indoctrination. But slightly indoctrination devalues the intrinsic essence of what you are learning. The schools, the formal schools, were committed to formal education, substantive education. But you also had the other dimension of Kwame Nkrumah, which was the Ghana Young Pioneers, in which all African youths, all Ghanaian youths, and when I talk of Ghanaian youth now in quotes, all African youths were brought into, and you were indoctrinated. You learned more about the African personality. You are being infused with the confidence that you could go out in the world and make a difference. You needed to be yourself. You needed to be proud of yourself.
State Affairs with Edmondo Bilo is live.
You see, Kwame Nkrumah knew the power of education in rebuilding the mind. Awolowo knew about it. The reason free education was launched in the Western region. Without education, you can't build the mind. And I'm happy that Governor Makinde is investing hugely in primary and secondary education. That will lead to takeoff. You know what that does to the mind of the students? What it will do to the minds of the teachers. If you look at South Korea, Japan, and China, if you study their education system, it is directed at the mind of the student. That's why I asked Professor Rawi, is it indoctrination? It is indoctrination. When you sharpen the mind. See, most Nigerians don't understand what is patriotism. It's only when they are playing football they are screaming Nigeria, Nigeria, Nigeria. After they lose the game, everybody move on. Well, we don't understand. If we were patriotic, we would not be stabbing the country. You know, most Nigerians are stabbing the country. You see, when you throw out bottle from the car to make the city filthy, you are stabbing the country. That's not patriotism. Patriotic people don't do that. Patriotism is you love your country. I know some people will say the country has not done anything for you, so you will hate it. No, if we had that kind of education system where we build love of country into the people, it is that love they will use to transform their land. In that case, they will not be feeling entitled. It is the people that build their country. Yes, we can blame government. Those in government are part of the people. They were the people before they became government. So because of that environmental factor that choked their minds to innovation, when they get to leadership, that is what they will exhibit. No doubt. You don't just go to government and begin to do good. When you are a bad person and you get to government, that is the character you will exhibit. But when you indoctrinate the people through good education, they become innovative. Kwame Nkrumah knew that. He knew to build a great Africa, Pan-Africanism, you needed to come with special education, well-funded education. But see, let's look at what happened after Nkrumah was overthrown. There was a quit order because Nkrumah wanted Ghana to be a hub. If you're an African, come in. His own was that we are Africans. You know, Nigeria opposed Kwame Nkrumah's Pan-Africanism. There might be some reasons for that. But let me bring him Arauye again. There was a quit order for all Africans to leave Ghana after Nkrumah was overthrown. Why? Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown.
Yes.
After he was overthrown, what happens to your education?
Oh, thank you. In the immediate years of Nkrumah's overthrow, from his legacy was so strong that you couldn't roll back the gains that Ghana had made. So the GET schools remained what they were, essentially strong educational institutions founded on merit, the pursuit and advancement of merit. And I enjoyed that tremendously. And I must also say, at this point, that my education in Ghana and the process of getting into Ghana Secondary School and the experiences there actually will be the definitive force that has turned me into who I am as a passionate Pan-African. When I went to Ghana Secondary School in September 1966, Ghana Secondary School Koforidua, the principal was D.O.K. Dankwa. My father, I have very humble beginnings, went to school with me for the first day. He took me there from Akotia. And I had a trunk box and I had a small chop box made of wood where I put my supplementary food like everybody does, even in Nigeria. And the principal walking by, so he said to my dad, Mr. Salami, why did you buy Lasisi a small box? And my father, a humble man, was a little perturbed. And the man said, Mr. Salami, don't be worried about it. Come to my office. And then we went into the principal's office. And he brought out this sheet. He said, oh, we just received this today. And he looked, oh, I'm happy to inform you, Mr. Salami. Lasisi has been awarded the Cocoa Marketing Board scholarship. He will go to school free of charge. You are not going to pay any school fees.
Cocoa Marketing Board scholarship.
CMB scholarship in those days. And so I went through my experience at Ghana Secondary School without paying a farthing.
And that was the policy that was laid down by Kwame Nkrumah.
It didn't matter because my name was Salami or Lasisi, being Nigerian. If we had Malians, we had Cameroonians.
What mattered was that you are an African.
An African. That was what mattered. So you grew up yourself, you considered yourself a Ghanaian, but not just a Ghanaian, but an African. So my education was smooth. And I can look back on my experience with a lot of fondness. I can, and a lot of nostalgia.
So at what point did you have to leave Ghana?
And then the bogus nationalist of Dr. Kofi Abrefa came into office in 1969.
After Kwame Nkrumah was gone.
Yes. And they decided they were going to rescind all the Pan-African policies of Kwame Nkrumah. These were misguided nationalists. And so we had the aliens quit order in December 1969. And in a jiffy, all Africans became unwanted aliens in Ghana.
Alien quit order.
The aliens quit order of December 1969.
They must leave Ghana.
Everyone had to leave Ghana. Not only that, it was so bad. And when I left school, in January 1970, I left Ghana Secondary School straight in Koforidua to the seaport. And because Nigeria was going through a civil war at that time, it took a while for the government of Nigeria to arrange for boats to come and take us.
Why couldn't you go home from school?
I couldn't go home because it was a quit order. And the Ghanaians,
just leave.
Just leave.
Immediately.
It wasn't even safe. Yeah.
Just like that?
Just like that. Because the environment had been poisoned.
Why that order? What was it that provoked it?
Because the pseudo-nationalists, is it the PP, Party Papa? Yes, the PP. Kwame Nkrumah was CPP, Conventions People's Party. But there was this nebulous political party that came that repudiated everything that Kwame Nkrumah stood for, including Pan-Africanism. And part of the concern was to cut down the stature of Kwame Nkrumah in the African firmament. And so, of course, having said that, earlier, yes, so in 1969, this order came and we had to leave. Some of us came back to this country, our home country. I was coming to Nigeria for the first time in my home country with a shirt on my back.
State Affairs with Edmondo Bilo is live.
There's a book I will recommend to President Bola Tinubu. It is entitled Africa's Security Challenges in the 21st Century, Power Principles and Praxis in Global Politics, written by Professor Tunde Adeniro. You see, what is going on with this Russian flag? If you read this book, you will see it coming. Don't play with intellectuals. They are deep thinkers. Sometimes we underrate these guys. If you read this book, you will see what is unfolding. You see, we've not heard the last of that Russian flag. We've not heard the last of the Russian flag. Who are those behind it? Let me tell you, Tinubu will not be able to arrest them. They can only watch them. Because there are big guys in this country that you cannot arrest. You only put them on the watch list. Because they have the capacity to create instability. I recommend this book to the President, Africa's Security Challenges in the 21st Century, Power Principles and Praxis in Global Politics, written by Professor Tunde Adeniro. I also recommend it to you. You can get it on udarabooks.com or through my WhatsApp number. I'll be back after this break. Remember, Nkrumah was overthrown. Who were those that sponsored the overthrow of Nkrumah? Because Nkrumah wanted to develop Ghana and Africa. In fact, he has launched an industrialization plan that would have revived the whole of West Africa. He had his flaws, no doubt. He had his flaws. But the CIA, American CIA, sponsored Ghana's military to overthrow Kwame Nkrumah. The CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, sponsored Ghana's military to overthrow Nkrumah. Nkrumah was not listening to America, and it was during the period of the Cold War. America had become a superpower. Soviet Union had become a superpower. They dealt with him. They took him out. The way they took Allende out of Chile, the way they took Mossadegh out of Iran, the CIA sponsored the overthrow of Mossadegh. It was what led to the Iranian Revolution that brought in the present theocratic system. I'll be back after this break. Don't go away.
Splash FM 105.5.
I was coming back from the ceremony with the Queen. I was in front of the residence, the ambassador's residence. He believed in their politics and he liked their style very much. Their pictures are in all his homes, in Lagos and Ibadan. He has pictures of both of them.
So he had people he admired.
Absolutely.
And Gandhi was one of them.
Yes, and Pandit Nehru. That's his mom. That's Papa's mom.
Oh.
He looks like her, doesn't he?
Wow.
My daughter.
So this is Boju.
Hello, that's me at The Hague. See, this gentleman is one of the Queen's chamberlains. He was the one that came to accompany me to the Queen's Palace to present my letters of credence. And he was a professor of internal medicine.
Okay.
And I thought he was deliberately chosen because there are several of them, doing all sorts of things. But because I assume that it's because he's in the same line of work as me. That's why they chose him to be the one to come and accompany me. And on that day, there's a picture in there. Okay. The convoy. I was in a horse-drawn carriage, and it was led by two mounted policemen, and both of them were women. So I just thought the Dutch put a lot of detail into welcoming me, and from that day we worked very, very well together.
Good. You were saying that Papa had to travel.
Yes, he left his campaign and came to the UK.
That was during the 1983 campaign.
1983 campaign.
To see his grandchild.
To see his grandchild.
He was that passionate about family.
He was a doting father. And he was the one that put these two pictures here before he died. He placed these two pictures.
Wow.
Himself. He was a doting. This was somebody's birthday or wedding.
Okay.
And we were sitting.
House.
That's Yemi, that's me, I think.
Okay.
I can't remember who's it.
38 Ibadan Road.
I think it's one of the Shonoikis. Okay. And you will see their father in the hall. Chief Shonoiki was Papa's friend. We make a distinction between his friends and political associates.
Okay.
Chief Shonoiki was his friend.
What's the difference between
He was a friend. A friend is a friend. Political associates, they can come and go.
So who were his other friends?
There were few.
He had few friends?
Very few. He had few friends who we knew were friends. One of them was Chief Longe. He's in the picture in there.
Okay.
Very thick friends.
And this picture?
This picture, my brother's children.
Okay, I have a message here from Babalola James Benga. He says, let the politics continue. It will definitely lead somewhere. Donald Amadi is saying, your attempt to balance Tinubu's ethnic divisive 2023 election actions by accusing Obi of stoking religious and claiming the Igbos also did similar ethnic politics in the East is not helpful and unfortunate. Amadi says it was Tinubu and APC that chose ethnic and religious divisions for the 2023 election. That cannot be shared or balanced with anyone. Okay, you are trying to balance it. My own idea is not to balance, because if you balance it, yes, you can say some persons were more intense than the others, but you cannot run away from it. Obi targeted the Christians for power. And if Tinubu were moving into mosque and mosques the way Obi, you would also raise some point. So Obi did. He targeted the church, just that the church is more liberal. Because when we see the liberalism in churches, it's not as conservative as the mosque. So sometimes we don't tend to look at the implication of what the church does in politics, because it is more liberal. It was the church that gave victory to William Ruto in Kenya. Ruto was moving from one altar to the other. You saw Jonathan now when he went to kneel before Adeboye. But because the church is liberal, not conservative, you don't tend to measure it. It is religion. It is. That's what it is. And ethnic politics is everywhere. Just as some persons were more intense. That's the balancing you were trying to put there. You know? Pablo Ricci. You know, sometimes, again, don't make this point that the Igbo people are also ethnic. They are ethnic too. They are ethnic. Igbo people are ethnic. The way other tribes are ethnic. They are ethnic. Okay? So this ethnic bigotry is a general thing. That some persons express it more intensely. Why sometimes you don't see the Igbo one? Because the Igbo is Republican and are cephalous. In that case, it's everywhere. The Igbo man is everywhere. So when there's any ethnic division, he feels the impact more than other tribes. Because you find him in all the villages, in Yoruba land, in Fulani land. So when there's any ethnic tension, they want to feel it. But the Igbo man is also ethnic. That is why Obi got almost 90% of the vote from the East. That's ethnic vote. Accept it or leave it. Obi defeated Tinubu in Lagos. So at that point, if you look at it, if you use Lagos, you could say, okay, I think that was where the tension even came in. Who owns Lagos, right? And that was the question. Who owns Lagos? In the 21st century, we're talking about who owns what. Who owns what? But you see, Yoruba persons are in parliament in Britain. You know, Nigerians, we are so hypocritical. And we'll be celebrating it. Oh, Yoruba man wins election in Britain. An Igbo man wins election in America. But here, I was telling somebody one day I might contest election in Ibadan. He said, don't try it too. I said, why? He said, you're not Yoruba now. He was so very man. He loves me so much. But he's saying, no, don't go there. You know, you see that tension. That tension. And I was looking at it. Perhaps I don't have to go there. Perhaps I need to find where I belong to and go and contest election. It's an ethnic state. It's so intense. But so let's open the lines. Let's take some calls. 080915 51055. 080915 51055. 07069493000. Good morning.
Hello. Good morning.
Your name and where you are calling from?
My name is Mwadi Ukuoga. I'm from Ogun State, calling from Ibadan. Yes, I have been listening to everything you're saying concerning this.
Why is this line
Awolowo? Okay, sorry. Is it clear now? Is it clear?
It's clearer now.
Okay, good. So, I just want to explain something concerning the state of Nigeria currently at regards to the tension and the youth now, everybody in the north flying the flag of Russia, and I realized that Nigeria is so divided along ethnic lines, religious lines, and if you look at Jonathan's regime, you realize that when we started this revolution now, we were all agitating in the southeast. Even in the north, I think some part of the north. But in the east, there was this kind of body language against Jonathan's regime. Now, if you look at it, I'm sorry to say I might be by heart a little bit, but something I've studied very well. Now, during Buhari's regime, started NSAS in Lagos too. I was part of it. You understand? I was part of it, but along the line, I had to back out because I realized everybody was taking advantage of it. Buhari's regime in 2020. We in the southwest, we also protect. In the southeast, they protected. But in the north, they were silent. Okay, good. Now, people from the south is the president of the southwest. Now we started protecting again. We in the southwest, we have started again. We don't mind it if our brother. It's not about business. Whether it's Yoruba man, I'm part of it. We have to because against everybody. Like you were all saying. But I was amazed. I was so surprised to see that our brothers from the north were even agitating more. Even where they were silent, don't worry, they took it as in, they took it so personal now. Putting out the Russian flag. I don't know what that means. But our brothers from the east are not silent. Our brothers from the east are silent. They said it's none of that business. They're not going to protest. But silence speaks more than than talking. Their silence means that they don't mind what the state of the country is. What they want is division. But in the north, they want the military to take over. Rather. So my brothers in the south, I don't understand Nigeria is so divided right now. I love Nigeria so much. I still believe in the unity of Nigeria. Irrespective of our tribe and religion, I believe we will take the country to the eye. I'm not concerned about the Yoruba man being the president or an Hausa man or Igbo. I even want an Igbo president. In fact, I do tell my Igbo brothers in Lagos that I don't mind an Igbo president. So Nigeria should look forward to the youth. Now, I don't know about the youth in the north. I don't know that now. The youth all over Nigeria now start thinking. We should now start thinking about how to revolutionize Nigeria. Not all about voting the right person. We are huge. We are also corrupt. These are corrupt. Our leaders are the reflection of who we are. So let's get the corruption out of this country and Nigeria will move forward. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. I enjoyed listening to you.
Sure.
Thank you. I enjoyed listening. These are pan-Nigerians, But you also give it to the Yoruba nation. If you look at the antecedent of the Yoruba nation will protest whether the son or daughter is there or not. And that is the power of education. There was protest in Lagos. There was protest in Ibadan. But the East decided not to protest. They have their reason. Okay. But one thing I will tell anybody listening, that the East, the Southeast, is a bomb waiting to explode. The East is a bomb waiting to explode. Restructure this country. The East, the Igbo nation, is so hugely endowed that Nigeria is not tapping into that nation. Nigeria is not tapping. The military wanted to weaken the East. Nigeria need to tap into the East. The Igbo nation is so endowed. Go to Newi and see. Go to Onitsha, Aba. You see innovation and creativity at play. So intense. But with policy, you're frustrating that nation over the years. But that nation must also awaken to revive itself. The domestic leadership in Igbo land is not vibrant enough. They produce some of the worst governors, especially Imo State. Some of the worst governors in Nigeria. But having said that, a developed Nigeria is a Nigeria that taps into the ingenuity of the Igbo nation. You know what war does? War leads to development if you tap into it. After the war, it was intentionally orchestrated to destroy the Igbo science that kept them going for 3 years. Purposeful nation will tap into the science that kept the Igbo nation fighting war without arms for 3 years. The science that were created. It's not the people you can tie down. Their creativity will always show. And never should the Igbo nation and the Yoruba nation be at loggerheads. These are special nations. Take it. And Tinubu should look at it and tap into it. The Igbo nation, the Yoruba nation. Those nations tap into each other and see what happens to development. There's no negative rivalry. Trade. Look at trade, the power of trade. Look at what trade has done to China. It is trade. Manufacturing. You can't manufacture. That's why she talk about productivity. You are not manufacturing. Even the Yoruba nation was a manufacturing hub under Awolowo. Ikeja, manufacturing hub, Oluyole Estate. Is Oluyole Estate not supposed to be an industrial hub? University of Ibadan, is it not supposed to be a center of excellence? Ife. If Nigeria was working, how would they dare fly the Russian flag in Nigeria as sovereign nation? You dare not do that in China. You go and fly Nigerian flag? Say you are protesting? You fly the Russian flag? It's a fragile state. That is why that can happen. We will not build a fragile state. We will build a state that will compete technologically with the rest of the world. We will build aeroplanes that will fly so high. We will take care of our national borders. We will integrate Africa. Africa can compete with the rest of the world. We will eliminate wars in Africa. Good education. Africa is coming. The pains you see today are the beauties that will come. But that beauty must emanate from your mind. Arise, Africa. Arise and shine. African people, great people. We connect with Ghana. We connect with South Africa, Rwanda, with Kenya. When our children travel abroad, they go home and they go there and bring back knowledge. And we build Africa. I was looking at Japan. After the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki towards the end of World War II, what happened? Emperor Hirohito of Japan surrendered to the Allied forces on the 14th of August, 1945. Then began the occupation of Japan by United States forces led by General Douglas MacArthur. Before then, Japan had never experienced occupation in its history. The occupation ended with the signing of the San Francisco Treaty of 1951. The important point here is that the occupation transformed and gave Japan the opportunity to embark on political and economic reforms. By the 1980s, Japan had become the second most powerful economy in the world. Purposeful leadership. What did Japan do? Japan dropped its negative old ways to become an industrial power. It launched a new political process, economic policies, and technological paradigm within a short period of about 20 years. Having found its strength, Japan on the move, on the verge of rearming to protect itself from the threats of North Korea and the not too friendly China. Another point I need to make to you, this China we talked about, Japan colonized Korea for a period of more than 30 years. South Korea is a champion, it's an advanced country. It was occupied by Japan. Before the rise of China, Japan invaded China and occupied Manchuria. Why am I raising this point? Yes, colonialism has come, we have been occupied, but we can rise. That's the point. Someday I will give you the history of China so that you understand the power of the mind. In the case of Korea, the Japan-Korea Treaty of 1905 made Korean Empire a protectorate of Japan. The annexation of Korea by Japan was consolidated by the 1910 treaty between both states. From then till 1945, Japan exercised full sovereignty over Korea and subjugated Koreans to various degrees of humiliation, but it did not stop South Korea from rising. It took the military intervention of the United States and the Soviet Union to release Korea from the political and military grip of Japan. Japan was bombed to submission by the great powers. The use of the atom bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki was supposed to be devastating economically, but Japan woke up. And Japan is one of the best places to live in the world. Arise, Africa! Despite the obstacles we have seen, we can fly. 6 miles to the moon, we will touch the stars. I am Edmondo Bilo. Thank you for listening. Next Saturday is another time on State Affairs. The next program is Ijoba Ibile with Abiodun Adewale. It is Splash 105.5 FM, the Integrity Station.